So today I'm going solo, but we're going to talk about dog evaluations because we know that right now you guys are getting requests from a lot of clients. There's a lot of new dogs out there, and we haven't talked about dog evaluations for a while. So it is really important that you guys know what dogs do well in your groups and have a formal assessment process that will tell you um, whether you are taking in the dogs that are going to make your play groups better or not. And we always kind of go back to our traffic management signal when assessing dogs. We like to kind of think about the green dogs versus yellow dogs or red dogs. So, of course, we don't think red dogs are appropriate dogs to be in play group. Doesn't mean they can't come to your center. It's just that large play groups may not be the right fit for them. One of the reasons why we really like enrichment daycare is that seems to be a better environment for some of those red dogs where they can do individual activities. So for play groups, that means you want either green dogs or yellow dogs. And we really think you should set a goal of having 80% of the dogs in your play groups green and only 20% yellow. And the reason for this is it definitely makes the groups easier to manage and provides a higher safety factor for all the dogs in your groups. So how do you kind of do the assessments? What's the best way? And we're going to talk about that today. So again, you want to think about what makes a dog green in your center. Usually they have that green body language. They listen, they're easy for you to redirect, and their arousal level and energy level stays lower. The yellow dogs are usually the ones that take more time of staff to either redirect, to intervene when things are happening, and you may actually find that they're separating them. And keeping that ratio and knowing your dogs 80-20, it's going to make it easier for your staff. And so if you are kind of short-staffed right now and staff are really stressed, having a discussion about the dogs that are in your groups and maybe even doing some reevaluation of the existing dogs and scoring them red or yellow or green, you may find that helpful. And for those of you that are members of our library, we actually have some assessment tools that will make it really easy, and it quantifies and scores whether the dogs end up being red, yellow, or green. So hopefully that's important to you. The other thing that we always say is to make a list of the behaviors that are appropriate for your play groups versus the behaviors that are inappropriate. And that will also kind of keep this whole assessment process objective. So doing that ahead of time, it's not going to be about the dog. It's going to be about what behaviors are you seeing, and are the behaviors appropriate for your groups or not. So those are, some tools and tips that will help you in this whole evaluation process. So if you've got questions, go ahead, and I am seeing comments. So that's great. We're persevering here through this, and I appreciate your patience as I am doing this with a whole new platform and everything today, but it looks like things are working. So new dogs, the way we at the Dog Gurus recommend that you do dog evaluations is that you have a formal process and you get some history on the dog by either interviewing the dog owner or having them fill out a form. And again, I referenced our library, and we do, as in the library, have a lot of information on evaluating dogs, including that form that the dog owner would fill out. But you can also just kind of ask them questions because you're trying to determine whether they're going to be a good fit for your groups. And it goes to the behavior, the breed of dogs, size of dogs, whatever is going to make it easy for you to keep the dogs safe, for the dogs to have fun and really enjoy play group and not just tolerate it. So that's something that you definitely need to assess. The next thing you need to do once you have the paperwork is set up that appointment and be prepared. And generally we say that your more experienced counselors or even supervisors should be the ones that are leading and evaluating and assessing how the dog is doing during the evaluation. It is really important that they have a good understanding of canine body language and can pick up on behaviors that may not be appropriate for your group. Now, this assessment and evaluation session is important, but I just corresponded with someone earlier in the week who was asking, what if you see different behaviors than later on than what you saw during the evaluation? And just know that that is common. Remember, our dogs see the world as things that are familiar or unfamiliar. So the first time that a dog comes to your center for an evaluation, that's going to be an unfamiliar situation for them. And so in that case, you may not see the behaviors that you might later once they get comfortable and the environment feels familiar. So keep that in mind, that the evaluation process is just the first step. And then you're going to want to make sure that you've got what we call evaluator dogs, either dogs that are your personal dogs or staff dogs or just dogs that are kind of bomb-proof, that really do enjoy meeting other dogs and that will help you assess behavior. So they are probably going to be good at drawing behavior out of other dogs. I had a dog, Shep, who just loved to do evaluations. It was just kind of his thing. He loved meeting these new dogs, and sometimes he was a little rude to them, but then you get to see what happens when an evaluator dog is rude to a dog. How are they going to respond? And what you want to do in your evaluation process is put a little bit of pressure and stress on the dog being evaluated, which we call the candidate dog, because you will want to see things in that environment versus waiting until you get them into a play group. So having a set of evaluator dogs that you know and trust is really important. So there is a question from Melanie that I'm going to answer. She says she's opening in November, so congratulations on that, Melanie. And how would you do evals before opening? That's a great question. What you can do is, like I say, find dogs, your own dogs, friends and family dogs, and kind of practice this evaluation session. Using them would be great, and you can either do that at a park or any place that's dog friendly to where you can kind of be isolated. It could be in a backyard. Space is your friend during an evaluation process, and we actually recommend that when you're doing evaluations that you have dogs on 6-foot leashes. And you would need 2 people, and you would not want one of them to actually be the parent of the candidate dog. We recommend that somebody neutral have that leash, and that you also have the leash of the evaluator dog, and you kind of allow them to come at an arc approach and keep the leash loose. So you have to really keep your eye on the dogs and be ready to move quickly if they start to really come at each other quickly. And you kind of have to do the maypole dance to where you don't get your leashes tangled up. And again, you're watching for the greetings. Do you have a polite greeting or a rude greeting? I wouldn't rule out a dog just because they had a rude greeting. In fact, what I observed a lot during evaluations when I operated Urban Tails is that evaluator dogs would come in head on, which is considered a rude greeting behavior. But that's something they did. And really what you're doing is you're observing behavior and kind of filing away what you're seeing to determine, is it going to be a good fit in your center or not? And so you just want to kind of observe. I wouldn't necessarily expect the evaluator dogs to play with the dog. That's kind of unusual. Usually that may happen if you have a younger dog, but a lot of your evaluator dogs, if they're older, 3 or older, won't play with the dog. They'll do kind of the sniff greeting. You may see some interactions, and then they kind of just coexist. And again, you're looking at the body language of both the candidate dog that's being assessed as well as your evaluator dogs that you know. And is this the way that you would expect them to behave in meeting a dog that they are comfortable being in group with. That's what you're trying to assess. So we do evaluations on leash. You can introduce them to one at a time, multiple evaluator dogs. Again, different sexes is important. You may want to introduce them to what we call a button pusher, a dog that you know is kind of pushing buttons, but of course doesn't go too far with yellow behaviors. But again, we want during this assessment process to find out what's going on with the dog and are they going to be a good fit and be safe in our centers and also enjoy it. And so that's really important, is the evaluation process is stressful on that candidate dog, but are you seeing body language that, you know, they are comfortable being around other dogs, they do listen to the cues, and they do respond to you. You want to make sure that it's also going to be safe for your staff to be in group and be able to handle that dog if they need to. So you know, it's important that not only does the dog enjoy being around other dogs, but they're comfortable being around other people and new staff members. So let me check the comments and see if we have any other questions. If you watch Dog Impossible, he showed you how to introduce dogs on leash. It's very interesting. So yes, it is interesting to really, I love watching dog evaluations. We also have a dog evaluations course that does include video of dogs being introduced and kind of takes you through, you know, our formal step process of how to do that. So it is a course that we have that you can access by going to our website and our store if that's something that you're interested in. So just to kind of recap, we're making sure we know in advance the behaviors we do want to see and don't want to see in the dogs that come to our play groups. So you're watching to make sure the behaviors you're seeing are the ones you want to see, and you're not seeing inappropriate behaviors. You also want to make sure that your staff will be safe around the dog and other dogs will be safe, and that the candidate dog is comfortable and kind of enjoying this process and is not overly frightened. And, you know, what we say, those wallflower dogs, that's not necessarily they're enjoying the environment. But again, during a short evaluation session, once you've introduced multiple dogs one at a time on leash and you're feeling comfortable, you might then make a small play group to where you have 5 or 6 dogs that are off leash. At that point, you may want to bring in a dog that you think might be a suitable playmate, because it is important during the assessment process to determine what play styles the dog has so that you can, again, make good play group matches once you go back to the play groups. So doing that in a small group environment after you've done the one-on-one introductions can give you more information. And that's what this assessment process is all about, is just gathering as much information as you can so that you have a clue as to how this dog is going to do once you introduce them to your play groups. And that would be the next step. Sometimes that happens the same day as the evaluation, sometimes it's another day, and that may also just depend on the dog. But when you introduce them into a bigger play group, don't be surprised if you find that a dog that did really well in your group of 5, suddenly if he's put into a group of 20, is not the same dog and you don't see the same behaviors. You may need, you know, to slowly grow the group to that group of 20. You have to be able to read the dog and see how comfortable they are. And then your assessment goes to, okay, how does this dog do now in a bigger group? If you're running the big play groups, you want to make sure that the dog is going to do well in those as well as smaller groups. To some of you that have followed Robin and I for a long time may remember her talking about her lab Denver, who was great with 4 or 5 dogs, but he never did enjoy being in the larger groups of 20 or more. So again, this really, your process is going to depend on how you run your business and your play groups, how many dogs that dog needs to be comfortable around, whether it's indoor or outdoor. There's all kinds of variables that's going to make it important that you customize this evaluation process to how you run your centers. I was in all indoor facility, and so we kind of learned that the herding breeds that needed lots of space just didn't do well. We didn't have enough space for them. And so I would refer them to one of my competitors in town who had an acre play yard. Those herding breeds did better there. Again, that's going back to knowing what dogs do well in your play groups and what ones don't. And again, we talked about that your goal should be that you have 80% green dog and 20% yellow. That's going to make it a lot easier for your team members and less stress on them to manage the play groups. And right now we know you guys are under a lot of stress because there's just so many dogs, and it's hard to get more trained team members on board. So if you're looking for a way to kind of boost morale of your team members, it may be time to kind of look at some of those yellow dogs if you think you've got more than 20%, and kind of do an evaluation of dogs that are existing in your play center. And can you find another opportunity for those yellow dogs and maybe pull them out of your big groups so that there's less stress there. So let me check the comments here real quick. Okay, Stacy's asking, how do we deal with a dog that has been absolutely 100% previously with all dogs, but then takes a liking to one new dog and will not stop following it around, giving it no space, not aggressive, more attracted to it? Yeah, that can be annoying. And again, for all behaviors, we really are looking at what is the behavior of what we would call the victim dog, or the dog that's being followed around all the time. What body language are you seeing from that dog? And if that dog is giving off body language that I'm annoyed, I'm not enjoying playgroup anymore because this dog is following me around all the time, then you do need to intervene. And if you, that's why we like for your staff to know and do recalls. So that would be the first thing. Can you recall that dog away and distract him and get him engaged with another dog or in another activity? If you try recalls and that doesn't work, then we might do what we call a happy walk, which is using a slip lead. Put the dog that's following around on slip lead and have them walk around with your daycare counselor, and then let him off leash. And if he goes right back, I would do another happy walk. You can try timeouts, same thing. If you just can't get him to stop, then you would need to put one of the dogs in a separate play group, because it's not fair to the dog that's being pursued to have to put up with that. And dog behavior changes over time, and it's on a continuum. So even though he was fine previously, obviously he's not now. And so finding out what's going on and seeing if you can change the behavior. If you can't, then you may have, and we had some dogs that couldn't be in the same play group. It wasn't always aggression related. Again, it's you want every dog in the play group to be enjoying it. And so if there's something going on that they're madly in love with each other, but they don't know how to tone that back, sometimes you do have to still separate the dogs. All right, let's see. I don't see any additional questions, but if you have them, go ahead and post them. Let me see what else we're going to do. But yes, planning your introduction. You want to make the dogs as comfortable as you can, but you definitely know that the situation and process is going to be stressful on that candidate dog. That's just kind of part of it. And seeing how they're going to react under stress does give you information that helps you. So not only is it important to follow a consistent formal process for all dogs that you evaluate when they're new to your center, we also recommend that you do evaluations of your existing dogs, because again, the behavior may change over time. And so it is important to keep track of that. So I'm going to put a link. If you want more resources, we definitely have them. Like I say, we have a whole course on doing dog evaluations, and so I'll post a link to that. And we also have a lot of information in our library membership on how to do dog evaluations. So if that would be helpful, we would love to have you participate in that information. So of course I'm having troubles getting a link because this is not what I always do. So this is interesting. I'm not sure why I'm not getting a link for this. So, all right. I'm not the tech person. That's why we always have Robin here for the tech, and she had tech issues herself. So we're doing the best we can today with what we've got. So I'll just put in just our thedog.gurus.com, and if you go to our store page, then you'll look for the dog evaluations course is one resource, and then the other one we have is our library membership course. So that will also help you. So I think I saw another question. How does the evaluation process go for the green, yellow dogs? Like what behavior puts a dog in the yellow zone? Yeah, that's a great question. I would say a dog that doesn't listen to cues and direction from a handler is a yellow dog. A dog that's quick to arouse and have high energy would be a yellow dog. Dogs that do not listen to other dogs that are telling them that they're not comfortable is a yellow dog. Excessively rough play to me is a yellow dog, because a lot of dogs don't like that. So that's part of you looking at your center and determining those inappropriate behaviors. And if you see those in the dog, then that's probably going to add up to being a yellow dog. Janice also is asking, how do you manage a 7 to 8 month old unneutered dog who cannot stop trying to mount another dog, no interest in playing whatsoever? Yeah, unneutered males can be a challenge. And again, I would do the same things that we were talking about with the dog that was following the other dog. I would start with a recall. If the recall doesn't work, I would do a happy walk. Happy walk doesn't work, try timeouts. If that still doesn't work, and again, if the behavior of the dogs that he's mounting is that they're annoyed by it and it's making their day uncomfortable, then he may have to take a break from daycare or only do shorter sessions or go into an enrichment-based daycare. You may want to try him again after he's been neutered if he's going to be. But I would give that some time for the hormones to kind of adjust. But not every dog is appropriate for off-leash play. So when you're seeing a lot of these inappropriate behaviors from your list, that's when you need to assess and have conversations with the pet parent as to why the dog is no longer doing well in group. And again, that's another reason why it's important to have these behavior lists, because you don't want it to be about the individual dog. You want to assure the owner that you like your dog, but in your experience, there's a list of behaviors that are appropriate for dogs that are in group to ensure that every dog that's there has an enjoyable time. And then there's a group of behaviors that are inappropriate, and you're observing inappropriate behaviors that are making it an issue for the dog to continue. And it's just one of the things you have to do when you're managing groups. So that's a good question. So other resources we have, if you want to kind of continue the conversation and get more input on doing dog evaluations, we also have a Facebook group that's a free group that we would love for you to join. It's called Grow Your Pet Care Business. So again, I'm going to try to post a link to that. If you're not a member of our Facebook group, we encourage you to come and join it. And we only have 2 rules for you to join our Facebook group. Is we want all of our community to be helpful, supportive, and nice and kind to one another. So that's the first rule. And then the second rule is you can't sell stuff, because we want this to be more of an education supportive environment. And so if you break those rules, then Robin or I or one of the admins will boot you out, but we don't have to do that very often because we do have a very supportive community. And so if you have more questions that you would like to have answered about doing evaluations or determining whether a dog that you've evaluated before and is still coming, is still appropriate for your groups, then you can join us over there. And I'm sure Robin will chime in. I'll be there as well as a lot of our coaches. We have really good conversations. Our community is very well educated, and we have a lot of our followers that have been on for a long time, and we appreciate having them there. And so you get really good input. So today didn't go exactly as we planned, but I think we got through it. And so hope you enjoyed and found this helpful. And we will see you soon. And come visit us over in our Facebook group.